One late night, a young monk in a temple awoke with a stomachache. Quietly slipping out of the meditation hall, he intended to relieve himself outside the temple grounds. The darkness was impenetrable, with only a cold moonlight casting an eerie glow over the ancient stone path, so still that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. On his way back to his quarters, the young monk inadvertently passed the chamber of the temple's abbot, Shi Genji, and faintly caught strange sounds emanating from within. Deep breaths of a man mingled with a woman's suppressed sobs, blending into the silent night. A knot tightened in the monk's chest as the thought struck him. How could such impure sounds emerge from this sacred Buddhist sanctuary? Curiosity piqued, he crept closer, holding his breath to listen. He faintly overheard an intimate exchange between a man and a woman, the man's voice unmistakably that of the abbot. The monk retreated in silence, but his mind churned, unable to find peace for days. Lately, he had noticed villagers whispering that Abbot Shi Genji was entangled with a woman outside the temple and had fathered a child. By day, the abbot projected kindness and benevolence, yet behind this facade lurked a scandal. Torn by doubt and fear, the young monk dialed the police to report the abbot's behavior. Upon receiving the call, Fujian police refrained from immediate action. A lone monk's testimony wasn't enough to warrant prosecution. Instead, they opted for a discreet investigation into the abbot's identity and background. Who was this abbot? What was his story? What dark secrets were unfolding within these temple walls? You're watching True Crime in the World. Here we unravel the most enigmatic cases and gripping tales you may never have encountered. As always, before we dive into today's mystery, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss a video from True Crime in the World. Thank you so much. Let's travel back to the 1990s to explore the story of Liu Yongxian, then just 22 years old. Born into a poor family, this young man carried an unrelenting drive to overcome his circumstances. After high school, he worked in his hometown, but seeing peers leave for cities in search of better lives, Liu Yongxian began forging his own plans. He set out alone for Tianjin, China, plunging into the vibrant urban current to seize a chance at a brighter future. In Tianjin, Liu Yongxian landed a job at the Fuhua steel mill in Jinghai district, a facility founded by Xue Yinfu and his two younger brothers through pooled resources. Xue Yinfu was a decisive manager who ran the mill with precision, though tinged with arrogance. The Fuhua steel mill thrived, operating 24/7 with workers on rotating shifts, all under Xue Yinfu's oversight. With little education and few prospects, Liu Yongxian settled for a laborer's role. Initially, life was grueling, hauling heavy steel beams daily, but the young man brimmed with hope. During this time, he met Lu, a girl from his hometown. Shared struggles and a tough life drew the two closer together. Before long, they moved in together, leaning on each other for support. To boost her income, Liu Yongxian persuaded the director to hire Lu at the mill. Though it was only temporary work, it allowed them to share a dorm room. Despite hardships, their life felt serene. Liu Yongxian adored and pampered Lu, unwilling to let her suffer. Learning she admired a dress in a shop, he quietly saved his entire salary to surprise. Liu Yongxian once believed that with persistent effort and savings, they'd build a happy home. Yet, as time passed, he noticed changes in Lu. Her attire grew fancier, her clothes more luxurious, and she began wearing costly jewelry. Initially too absorbed in work, he overlooked these shifts. Then a co-worker revealed seeing Lu entering and leaving Xue Yinfu's office with an odd demeanor. Suspicion gnawed at Liu Yongxian, his heart thrown into turmoil. Lu no longer resembled the simple, humble girl he once knew. During the 1995 Lunar New Year, Liu Yongxian took Lu back to Henan to celebrate. On a frigid winter night, a fierce argument erupted on the clay bed in their home. Losing control, Liu Yongxian pressed Lu. Was she involved with the director? Why had she been seen at his office? Cornered, Lu broke into sobs, confessing a shattering secret that left Liu Yongxian stunned. Xue Yinfu had coerced her in his office at the mill. Hearing this, Liu Yongxian felt his world crumble. Rage, humiliation, and helplessness collided, morphing into a deep hatred for Xue Yinfu. This revelation swiftly soured their relationship, with quarrels escalating into physical clashes. Overwhelmed, Liu left home, abandoning Liu Yongxian to drown in despair and fury. On February the 25th, 1995, the 26th day of the first lunar month, a bitterly cold night gripped the region. Fueled by rage, Liu Yongxian boarded a train back to Tianjin, his mind fixated on one goal: confronting Shui Yinfu to avenge what had been done to his girlfriend. As night fell over Tianjin, he slipped silently into the Fuhua steel mill, heading straight for Shui Yinfu's duty room. Pushing the door open, he found the director asleep on his bed. Grabbing a thick steel plate from the corner, Liu Yongxian struck with all his might. Shui Yinfu jolted awake in agony, struggling to resist, but Liu Yongxian's fury overpowered him. The steel crashed down repeatedly, the final blow striking his head. Shui Yinfu's breaths faded, then stopped. Seeing the room awash in crimson, Liu Yongxian realized the enormity of his crime. He dropped the steel and fled in a panic. At this point, Liu Yongxian was nearly consumed by despair, desperately seeking ways to flee Tianjin. In the years that followed, he wandered aimlessly, eventually finding refuge in Hainan, where he lived in obscurity under a false name. He took on any odd job to survive, hauling bricks at construction sites, loading cargo, whatever came his way. But this existence was far from easy. Every glimpse of a police officer or mention of the old murder case sent shivers of fear and unease through him. To escape the haunting guilt and relentless pursuit of justice, a thought began to take root. Could shaving his head and becoming a monk be his only way out? To avoid detection, Liu Yongxian remained vigilant, never staying at one worksite for more than 3 months before moving on. Eventually, he arrived in Jianyu County, Fujian Province, a remote area far from bustling cities, where small, isolated villages offered a fleeting sense of safety. One day, he asked an elderly villager if there was a place nearby where he could shave his head and take monastic vows. Seeing his disheveled hair and somber expression, the old man sighed. "You're so young. Why think of becoming a monk?" Liu Yongxian shook his head, suppressing the bitterness within, explaining that he'd endured many hardships and had no remaining worldly desires, only seeking the peace of the Buddhist path. Moved by his heartfelt words, the elder pointed him toward Shiyin Temple atop the mountain behind the village, suggesting a revered monk there might take him in. Liu Yongxian followed the mountain trail, at last reaching Shiyin Temple, nestled deep within a bamboo forest. The temple exuded an ancient, solemn beauty, its stone plaque at the gate inscribed with Shiyin Si. Entering, he expressed his wish to take monastic vows to the abbot. Seeing his exhaustion and sincerity, the abbot agreed, bestowing upon him the Dharma name Shi Zhenji. Liu Yongxian claimed his name was Sun Xiaojie, saying he'd lost his identification papers. He later spent 1,000 wen, about $140, to acquire a fake ID under that name. As his head was shaved, Liu Yongxian gazed at the reflection of a bald man in a grey robe, silently vowing that from this moment, Liu Yongxian would cease to exist. Only Shi Zhenji would remain. He believed he could renounce the secular world and evade the consequences of his past sins. Yet, shaving his head couldn't erase the deep-seated fear and remorse within. Though his scalp was bare, the crime from years ago remained etched in his memory. Shi Zhenji quickly adapted to temple life. His intelligence, eagerness to learn, and diligence earned him affection from others. However, he wasn't content with a quiet, anonymous existence in this small temple. With the aging abbot's support, he was sent to the Guangdong Buddhist Academy to study and refine his knowledge. There, Shi Zhenji absorbed vast amounts of Buddhist scripture and forged connections with influential figures, steadily building a network. He began presenting himself as a devout monk, actively participating in major ceremonies. Years later, while traveling to further his studies, Shi Zhenji learned of the old abbot's passing. He rushed back to Fujian, assuming the role of Shiyin Temple's new abbot, embarking on a fresh chapter with his new identity. With a broad vision, Shi Zhenji gradually expanded the temple's scope. He solicited donations, renovated the grounds, and boosted its prominence. He also took on the role of General Secretary of the Fuking City Buddhist Association, engaging in religious activities and becoming a key figure in the local Buddhist community. His reputation spread swiftly, earning reverence from many devotees as an enlightened monk. Yet beneath this glory, the desires within Xu Zhenji stirred anew. He realized that, despite the dangers and uncertainties of his past life, the allure of power and temptation still lingered within him. In the summer of 2010, Xi'an Temple thrived with incense smoke. Xu Zhenji, then 33, returned from a grand ceremony, the faint scent of sandalwood clinging to him as he strolled leisurely through Fujian's streets. Rather than hastening back to the temple after the event, he chose to wander the bustling city. Though clad in a monk's robe, he was no ascetic seeking to detach from the world. On the contrary, his ambition and desires burned as fiercely as ever. Amid the throng of passers-by, his gaze settled on a youthful figure. It was Guo Xiaomei, a recent college graduate stepping into the world. Her delicate features and bright, curious eyes stood out in the crowd. In her early 20s, Guo Xiaomei's face carried a hint of naivety, as if shadowed by uncertainties about her future. That innocence and vulnerability captivated Xu Zhenji. Approaching her, he drew on years of Buddhist insight, speaking in a calm, resonant tone. Guo Xiaomei sensed a mysterious strength in this middle-aged monk, as if he could peer into her inner worries. Xu Zhenji adeptly gauged her emotions, weaving Buddhist philosophy to comfort and encourage her, swiftly winning her trust. After several meetings, Xu Zhenji began preaching to Guo Xiaomei about the purity and liberation of Buddhism, subtly suggesting she shave her head and take vows to escape worldly troubles. At first, she hesitated, but his persuasive words and psychological sway eventually prevailed. She believed this revered monk could guide her to true inner peace. Yet Xu Zhenji's motives weren't so pure. Arranging for Guo Xiaomei to take vows was a pretext to keep her close, creating opportunities for private encounters. He allowed her to stay at Xi'an Temple, maintaining a facade of master-disciple propriety by day, but under the cover of night, he secretly visited her, indulging in forbidden intimacy. The clandestine relationship stretched on for years. To secure Guo Xiaomei's trust in their future, Xu Zhenji painted a picture of endless prosperity. He promised that as long as she stayed by his side, she'd live in abundance. Meanwhile, he discreetly purchased properties in Fujian, Shenzhen, and beyond, laying the groundwork for an eventual escape plan. As time passed, Guo Xiaomei transitioned from temple life to becoming his lover, leaving the monastery behind to chase an urban dream in Shenzhen. Xu Zhenji knew that his monk persona alone couldn't sustain their future. To shield their affair from exposure, he resorted to an old trick, illegally acquiring another fake ID under the name Liu Wei. For years, Sun Xiaojie had been a pseudonym used alongside his monastic title, Xu Zhenji, allowing him to travel freely across the country. The Liu Wei identity, however, enabled him to legally marry Guo Xiaomei, forging a stronger bond. Unwilling to let his children bear the son's surname, he registered their marriage as Liu Wei and Guo Xiaomei. With this intricate web of aliases, Xu Zhenji shuttled between cities, using fake identities to buy homes and invest without arousing suspicion about his true origins. Backed by her monk husband, Guo Xiaomei transformed completely, shedding any lingering desire to live as a nun. She settled into a lavish life in Shenzhen, residing in a luxurious home with maids, draped in designer clothes, handbags, and chauffeured in a car worth over $100,000. Occasionally, she posed as a nun to visit temples with Xu Zhenji, the pair masterfully deceiving the public while secretly raising 2 children and sustaining their hidden marriage. To provide this opulent life for Guo Xiaomei and their kids, Xu Zhenji intensified his pursuit of wealth. His knack for enrichment rivaled even the most corrupt officials. Outwardly, the revered monk maintained a facade of simplicity and purity. Inwardly, he amassed a fortune. Many might wonder, how did he build such wealth? And the answer is straightforward. He exploited his status in the Buddhist community and the devotion of its followers. Xu Zhenji wove a vast business network. As General Secretary of the Fuking City Buddhist Association and abbot of multiple temples, he frequently led ceremonies and preached to devotees. Seizing these opportunities, he promoted himself as an enlightened monk, claiming he could ward off misfortune and resolve ill fate. Believers flocked to him, eagerly donating money to seek blessings for family safety and career success. Shi Zhenji deftly funneled these funds into private accounts, laundering them through companies he controlled for investment. He purchased a high-end villa in Shenzhen, a seaside mansion in Fujian, and even properties in Hong Kong. To conceal his vast fortune, he registered all assets under Guo Xiaomei's name while maintaining a humble image, driving an old car between the temple and city. Through his orchestration, Guo Xiaomei used the money to start a media company in Shenzhen, emerging as a shadowy tycoon. To outsiders, she was merely a prosperous businesswoman. No one suspected her husband was the esteemed monk Shi Zhenji from Fujian. As years rolled by, Shi Zhenji grew confident that his dual identities and tangled web of connections would never unravel. But justice casts a wide net, sparse yet inescapable. One late night, a young monk awoke with a stomachache, tiptoeing out of the meditation hall toward the temple's outdoor latrine. The darkness was absolute, a cold moon illuminating the ancient stone path in eerie silence. Returning to his quarters, he passed Shi Zhenji's chamber and faintly heard strange sounds, deep male breaths mixed with a woman's stifled sobs piercing the stillness. His heart clenched as he wondered, how could such impure sounds arise in this Buddhist haven? Curiosity drove him closer. Holding his breath, he overheard an intimate conversation, the man's voice unmistakably the abbot's. The monk slipped away quietly, but his mind couldn't settle. For days, he'd noticed villagers whispering that Shi Zhenji was involved with an outsider and had a child. By day, the abbot appeared gentle and virtuous. How could such a scandal lurk beneath? Gripped by doubt and fear, he called the police to report the abbot's conduct. Fujian police, receiving the lone monk's testimony, held off on immediate action, lacking grounds for prosecution. Instead, they launched a covert probe into Shi Zhenji's identity and past. After months of persistent investigation, police uncovered clues to his true identity. Yet, the 1995 murder occurred 22 years prior, and Fujian authorities lacked concrete evidence linking this revered monk to that long-ago killer. They resolved to delve deeper into Shi Zhenji's background, hoping to gather enough proof to bring him to justice. An undercover agent, disguised as a worshipper, visited Shiyin Temple. Seizing a chance, he stole a pair of Shi Zhenji's cloth shoes, drying in the courtyard. DNA extracted from them matched samples provided by Liu Yongxian's parents. A secret arrest operation was set in motion. On November 23, 2017, Shanyu County Police in Fujian apprehended Shi Zhenji near Shiyin Temple as he returned from a pilgrimage, ending his 22-year flight from justice. In the interrogation room, faced with irrefutable evidence from the police, Shi Zhenji had no defense left to offer. He confessed his true identity as Liu Yongxian and admitted to his heinous crime committed 22 years earlier in Jinghai District, Tianjin. With Shi Zhenji ensnared, Guo Xiaomei was also summoned for questioning. Upon examining her marriage certificate, police discovered her husband was listed as Liu Wei, not Shi Zhenji, Liu Yongxian, or Sun Xiaojie. Only then did Guo Xiaomei reels in shock, realizing the revered monk she had lived with for years harbored countless staggering secrets. The arrest of Shi Zhenji sent shockwaves through the public. Once a venerated monk of the Fuqing City Buddhist Association, he had been a spiritual pillar for countless devotees. Yet his true face was that of a murderer bearing grave sins, hiding from justice under a cloak of false piety. At trial, he bowed his head in admission, expressing remorse for deceiving followers and leading them astray. But in the face of the anguish of Shui Yinfu's family and the irreparable losses he caused, his belated repentance rang hollow. Shui Yinfu's younger brother tearfully accused him in court. "Your selfishness and cruelty stole my brother's life. My sister-in-law had to remarry, our elderly mother died of grief, and our family was torn apart." The victim's relatives pressed further. "Over the years, you amassed wealth and did good deeds, Can that ever compensate for the loved ones we lost? Ultimately, the court found Liu Yongxian guilty of murder, sentencing him to death with a 2-year reprieve. Later, due to good behavior, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Shi Zhenji's life was a turbulent saga. From a poor rural youth to a revered monk, then a convicted felon. His intelligence, boldness, diligence, and patience enabled him to survive the early days of evasion, swiftly rising to prominence in the Buddhist community. Yet his warped mindset and ruthless tactics plunged him into an inescapable abyss of crime. A monk should renounce worldly temptations, cultivate virtue, and root themselves in compassion. Instead, Shi Zhenji exploited Buddhism's sanctity, abused the trust of devotees, and turned a place of purity into a tool for profit. Life's journey may be long, but the path of karma stretches further still. He once believed he could outrun his past, but 22 years later, justice caught up. This is the law of cause and effect. No one escapes its reach. Shi Zhenji's tale serves as a stark warning. No matter how meticulously one disguises their sins, they cannot remain forever shrouded beneath a monk's robe. Virtue begets virtue, and evil reaps evil. In time, truth emerges, casting light on even the darkest corners. That brings today's case to a close. What are your thoughts on this story? Please share them in the comments below for discussion. Before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to catch more iconic cases on true crime in the world.